Welcome. We grow over 400 varieties of roses, ranging from miniature roses 15 centimetres plus to giant tree ramblers 15 metres or more in height. One of the main important features that we're looking for when we're producing roses or a new variety is that they should be scented. During the next few minutes, we shall be showing you how we produce roses, starting with the initial planting stage, going through the budding program, the lifting, and then the final potting and selling. The vast majority of our roses are produced by a propagation method called budding, rather than by cuttings, which is a popular misconception. By using the budding method, we can produce a uniform and vigorous crop of roses after 18 months. If we did it from cuttings, some varieties would not make saleable plants for several years, so the budding method keeps the cost of the plant down too. Rootstocks are seedling roses grown commercially as a single crop. Sown as seed, they germinate and are grown on for a season before being lifted, graded and dispatched to rose growers like us. The first stage in our rose cultivation is planting the rootstock. This is done in February or March using a planting machine towed by a tractor. The rootstocks are placed into the clips on the wheel, and as the wheel rotates into the ground, the clip then releases the rootstock into the soil. They are planted so that the neck of the rootstock is just above ground. We can plant somewhere about 20,000 in a day, and it takes 18 months from planting the initial rootstock to digging the finished rose bush. We use a rootstock called Rosa laxa, which is the most commonly used variety in the UK. Some growers use Rosa canina, Rosa multiflora or Rosa inermis, but experience shows that Rosa laxa is better for conditions in the UK. By early May, the rootstocks have established themselves. They are growing strongly and in a few weeks will be ready for budding. It is now June and we need to prepare the propagation material. Known as budwood, this is the stem of the required rose variety cut from established roses. To prepare the stems of budwood, we need to remove the leaves and flowers. We also take off the thorns so that the handling of the budwood later on is less painful and the job gets done quicker. One stem of budwood can yield about 8 buds or eyes, which are found at the very base of each leaf joint. Each bud or eye is the basis of a potential new rose. We are now into the budding season full time, which runs from June to September, when the rootstocks are growing vigorously and the sap is flowing strongly. The person bent over double here is called the budder, and he is a highly skilled craftsman. Good budders are becoming difficult to find today because the work requires discipline and stamina. He uses previously prepared budwood according to the variety labelled in the field. He removes a bud from the stem, makes a T-shaped cut in the rootstock, inserts the bud, and then cuts the top of the bud neatly level with a horizontal cut in the rootstock. A rubber patch is then clipped over the top of the bud to keep it dry and secure. This operation can only be carried out in dry conditions, as water and mud affects the chances of the bud making a union with the rootstock. Usually around 2,000 to 3,000 are done in a long day, which can start at 6 in the morning and go until 9 or 10 at night time. In the autumn we check the buds to see how many have taken. Some will grow out, while others just look green and promising. Ones like this are in the majority and will develop and grow out in the following spring. Early in the second year, another job requiring a strong back is heading back, which is done in January and February. This is simply cutting the rootstock down to where it was budded. We always cut with a slightly sloping incision, the top of the slope being on the side of the bud. This protects the bud by allowing water to drain away from the bud location. By April of year 2, the buds are beginning to shoot out from the rootstock. Now is the time that we can get an idea of the number of buds that will make it through to adulthood, so to speak. Budding success can vary between 60 to 90%, and the success or failure can be due to operator error or poor quality budwood in that it may be too long in waiting and poor weather conditions. By late May to early June, the buds which are now young plants are growing away nicely. Every year we find it incredible that by June those insignificant buds which were lying dormant in the neck of the rootstock have grown so high and are almost flowering. It's a tremendous sight, but also a worrying time, as the tender young shoots are extremely vulnerable to strong winds that can blow them out of their grafts. You truly would not believe how often it blows a gale in May and early June. If that should happen and the graft gets blown out, the whole plant is lost. Although Rosa laxa is the least prone rootstock to suckering, we have to keep an eye open for suckers, which are then removed. As suckers grow from the rootstock rather than the bud which is trying to take control. If we leave suckers on, they will drain the strength from the rose that we want to grow. They are always pulled off, never cut. Suckers are easily recognised on the plants at this stage by their pale green leaves, and if not removed, they will reduce the size of the plant. The plants will soon be in flower. They will continue flowering from June until the end of October. By November, the flowering is over and the plants are going dormant. This is the time that we dig up the plants using a machine called an undercutter. This is basically a blade that cuts through the soil and then shakes the plants to make it easier to pull the roses out of the ground. This part of the operation requires perfect weather and soil conditions, which is a rare occurrence in November. Once the plants are loose in the soil, they can be selected for the orders that we have been receiving all year. The roses are removed from the soil and labelled before being transported to the packing shed. Plants are only lightly pruned as further pruning is required after planting. They are checked against the order to make sure that the right plants have been lifted, bundled and tied, and then wrapped in newspaper which is dipped in water. The roots are then put into plastic bags and the order is then placed in a paper sack which is sealed ready for dispatch. Keeping the roots moist in this way means the plants will stay fresh in this packing for several weeks whilst they are in their winter dormancy. Roses not sold in this manner are potted for selling in the nursery later on. These are lifted from the field. Both roots and shoots are pruned to enable them to fit into pots. Root pruning is necessary to fit the roots in the pots without bending, and it will allow the roots to become more fibrous by doing so. Here the plants being pruned are bush roses, which require severe pruning. Climbers require less severe pruning. The roses are then potted using a special compost which contains loam and long-acting fertiliser. The pots used are extra deep to accommodate the extensive root system and to keep the roses growing well in their pots for several months. Firm potting at this stage is essential to remove any air pockets. Labels are tied on the plants immediately as it is very easy to get varieties muddled. The potted roses are placed on benches which are covered with capillary matting to conserve water. It's May again, and the potted roses are in bud, and we can anticipate the beautiful blooms that will follow. By June, the roses are in flower in their pots, ready for planting instant colour in the garden. This is hopefully the time when our sales are at their peak. The roses in the field are now in full bloom. One of our main promotional activities is exhibiting at flower shows. The blooms have to be cut at the correct stage, depending on the rose variety, the duration of the flower show, and the anticipated weather conditions. Sometimes, if it's very wet, we have to cut very tight and earlier than we would normally. Otherwise, a lot of bruised petals show up. We usually cut early in the day before it gets too hot. The blooms are placed in water as soon as possible. This job takes 2 people a morning to complete, and it must be started early and done quickly to keep everything as fresh as possible. Plants are selected for selling at flower shows. Climbing roses are staked and tied for easier carrying at flower shows. They must all have a certain je ne sais quoi. At the flower show, the roses are arranged into displays. All the stems are recut and inserted into oases. It can take up to 12 hours to prepare a display, generally using 4 people. The dogs come along too and bring their own amusements. Attention to detail is crucial. We have to make sure that everything on the stand is clean and tidy, that the flower displays look their best, and there are no dreadful colour clashes, a subject which always causes some disagreement. The finished display has won us a cup and a gold medal, which is wonderful for our morale and usually gives us some local or national media coverage. We use flower shows to launch new varieties of roses. This one, Reflections, is for the Lewis Manning Hospice and Pool, and the press have been invited to the launch. Every year we introduce new varieties of roses. These have been raised by rose breeders around Europe who use us to launch new varieties onto the UK market. An exciting way in which we are diversifying is the development of rose-related products using our own rose petals, of which we have quite a few. Up until now, they have been a wasted byproduct. Here we are, picking fully open rose blooms in the field from our current crop of roses. This is done early in the morning, which avoids evaporation of the all-important scent once the sun warms everything up. The petals are poured into the large drum right up to the brim, and a lid is clamped on. The bottom of the drum is like a colander but with larger holes. This surprisingly heavy drum of petals is lowered into the outer casing of the still, the base of which contains a heating element and several gallons of water. As the water is heated and reaches boiling point, steam rises and percolates through the drum of petals and is then pushed through the condenser unit, which is the column sitting on top. Cold water is turned on to flow around the condenser unit to cool the steam, and as a result, the steam condenses into rose water. We produce approximately 20 litres per distillation of very rosy smelling water. It should ideally be left to mature for a week or 2 in a cool, dark room where the scent will intensify a little. The rose products we are now selling include gardener's hand scrub, which we constantly use, hand and foot balm, face moisturiser and a body lotion. And of course delicious Turkish delight, which is flavoured by our rose water and always disappears very quickly whenever it's opened. If you can't visit us at one of the many shows at which we exhibit, you can come to the nursery to buy directly from us. Alternatively, you can select your roses from our catalogue and order by post, telephone or over the internet, confident that your roses will be delivered to you in first-class condition all year round. We hope to hear from you soon and look forward to supplying you with roses that will give you years of pleasure.